Hi everyone, I'm Andy from Scam Pro Audio, and I'm delighted to have Nick from Allen Heath here with us today. Would you believe it has been 12 years since the Allen Heath Qu series of mixers were actually released back in 2013? That's me maths correct. I did that all right, actually. And they brought something else out that is brand new. I've been really excited about this for a couple of reasons, actually. This is our brand new film studio that we're doing it in right now. This is the first time that I've actually been stood behind camera in the film studio. Nick's a little bit like, about doing this. But we've got the brand new Allen Heath Qu-5 in front of us here. So this looks gorgeous. It's a really, really impressive looking desk. It's nice to see that the aesthetics have changed a little bit on it. It's got a nicer, bigger screen on it. This is kind of looking SQ level, really.
Yeah, well, it's been a while, like you say, 2013. So as you probably realise, we've got CQ now, we've got SQ, got Avances and D-Live, and one of the things about all those consoles is that, and one of the major reasons this has changed now, there was nothing wrong with the old Q. Fantastic console,
nice
very popular. But this now has the 96K FPGA processing on board, so it's a natural progression up from where it was and brings it up to date with all the rest of the range.
That's it. I mean, there's an awful lot of competition around right now. We won't mention any names. Bringing in a better user interface, the bigger screen, like I said, I've noticed there. Obviously, that's much more Qu sort of style. What are the other sort of essential changes that you'd pick up straight away on this compared to the old one?
Okay, so like you said, it was an older console, but very popular because it was so easy to use. And so part of the kind of this new generation is that we want to keep that ease of use on board, and so it looks very familiar. It looks like a Q, but like a supercharged.
Yeah, definitely.
So still got the EQ section here, still got our preamp sections here. Some things that have changed that you'd notice straight away. We've got a scribble strip here now.
That is an absolute godsend. I remember actually this was actually back in 2019, bit of a story about myself. I had a little AV company. I was using an analog desk, and I was persevering with an analog desk for quite a lot of time, and a lot of it was down to a financial thing more than anything. But when it came to choose a digital console, my budget was saying Qu16, and then at some stage I'd get a stage box with it. So far, the major thing that put me off was the fact that there wasn't a digital scribble strip. I was still having to lay out masking tape, China graph pen or whatever.
Yeah, put some gaffer down.
And that was a nightmare. I remember having to hit the select button, and then the only way I could actually tell what was on the channel, other than the fact I could hear it, or if I'd configured the mixer myself, was by in the top corner of the screen, it would give you an indication of what it was. So you could name the channel, but it would only appear there after you'd hit the select. I went for an SQ5 in the end. For that single reason, spent another £1,000 or £1,500 or whatever it was to get it, just so that was there. Because visually it was easier.
Yeah.
When you're panicking setting up for a gig, you kind of know where everything is. Once you've configured the desk enough times yourself, certainly for band changes and stuff like that, if they've got a massive change, then there's another bit of tape at the bottom or a piece of A4 paper with all your workings out on there for the night.
That's very old school.
It was a need-must thing. So to see this is the first thing that I noticed that is excellent.
So as well as the scribble strip, now being able to name the channels here, one of the reasons we've done that is we've got 4 layers.
Okay.
So this is very different. So on the old Q, you had an input layer, an output layer, and a custom layer. So one of the reasons people like that is I always know where my inputs are. I always know where my outputs are. But this one, you can completely configure yourself. So you could have all your inputs on layer A or layer B, and then your mixers on layer C, and then maybe your effects on layer D. But you can completely do this however you like, however you see fit. So in that respect, that's where navigating the console then becomes a lot easier, having the scribble strips associated to the layers.
Yeah, otherwise that would be 4 layers of tape
4 layers
on the
of
old
tape.
one.
No one would know what was going on.
The other thing I've noticed as well is actually the layout of the preamp and the EQ section seems to be, I don't know if this is just my memory failing me, but the old one, everything was kind of really clumped together in one space, and it just seemed a little bit confusing. So to have preamp and processing separated from EQ, That just looks a little bit neater and tidier. I do like it on the SQ, how you got preamp and processing on one side, EQ on the other. It depends what people prefer to do. Some people prefer to twiddle control knobs on their desk, but obviously now you've got full touchscreen.
Yeah. So one of the things about the touchscreen is you'll notice it's a lot bigger. It used to be a 5-inch touchscreen, but now this is a 7-inch touchscreen, so it's the same size as a CQ and SQ. So it looks very familiar to those two consoles. As you can see, it's got a dark background as well, and that really helps with how clear the information is on the processing side of stuff. So when it comes to setup buttons, for example, or the utility button, trying to navigate through those, it's a lot easier to kind of find out where you are and what you're doing on the screen. There's a lot of visual feedback in terms of what's happening with the processing, with your gates and your compressors. So yeah, one of the things about this screen is you've got a lot more kind of information that you can get off it.
Yeah.
And,
It's very, very nice. What else is different? Recording side of things.
Okay. So at the minute you can see we've got some multi-track running through here.
Yep.
I think I drove you mad with this before.
Yeah. I really don't want to hear this track again, and probably you won't hear this track.
Okay,
but
we will not play this track. So we're running that through this new USB-C connector.
Okay.
So USB-A, old hat. USB-B, old hat. We do have a USB-A connector here.
Okay.
That's for stereo playback and record, but the USB-C connector will do multi-track.
Okay.
So that will do your 32 input channels here. We've got a Mac running here, so it's core compliant, but we've got drivers for Windows as well.
So there's a lot of features that are on the CQ range that has enabled us to kind of convert people from analog mixers into a digital mixer, because the actual format and the user interface is so easy to use. One of them being obviously automatic mic mixing, the feedback, the auto feedback eliminating processor that's inside there. Do we see this in the Qu as well?
Yeah, we do. So a lot of engineers are worried they're going to lose their job.
Yep.
Maybe, but a lot of these consoles go into churches and schools where they haven't got a fully paid sound engineer to look after the system. Yep. So these are designed to make those kind of jobs, setting the gain, a lot easier for people that don't fully understand what a gain might be, you know. So on this screen, on the preamp, I prepared one earlier. We've got a mic channel here.
Yep. And
we've got a lovely Audio Technica mic here, so you can see me going in there. So I want to set the gain. So what I need to do is I press auto set, and it tells me it's listening. And so you can see as I talk, it sets the gain, and it gives me a gain of 39 dB there, and it's complete. So it's as simple as that. Okay. I then press OK, and then we've got an auto gain button. So what that does is it monitors what's going on in that channel. And so if I was to talk really loud and really blow the channel up, you can see that it just
can actually see something that comes up there, AG for auto gain. That's cool.
Okay, so the idea of that is that it'll pull the gain down so that, you know, you're not clipping the channel and producing some horrible noises. And it will then stay at that level. It won't go back up because it's assuming that could happen again.
So anybody sort of like starting with this mixer who've never used a digital mixer before, auto gain, because obviously gain staging is an entirely different topic of conversation, because everything's a gain. You turn something up or turn it down, and it changes the level that's coming into the desk, which obviously changes the level that's coming out of the desk at some point. So when they get this thing, they unbox it, they plug a mic into it. All they're doing is they're hitting the select function. They're going to the processing screen that's on here, and they're just basically setting auto set.
Yes.
And you carry on with your day until it recognizes how much level it's in there, and then you can also put the auto gain on afterwards as the clincher, so it doesn't overdo things.
It will just monitor it for you, but it does have a party trick, because if we go to utility, you can see we've got a gain assist button here at the end. What I can do is I can set multiple channels. So I could set all my channels.
Okay.
There we have an all button. And I could do auto gain for all 32 inputs.
All right. So a band can just rock up, plug everything in. You can just set that, go to the bar.
Yeah. Say, play away. And so the band would play, and it listens to all the inputs coming in. And then it would set the gains for everyone.
Amazing.
So yeah, it's a really, really handy function. Really easy to use. And that's the kind of ethos behind this. It needs to be easy to use. Yeah, so auto gain, that's a new feature, and we also have feedback assist.
That's great.
So that exists on here as well. One of the differences we've got on the new Q is the amount of mixers that we have available to us. So we've got 12 mix buttons down here, of which we could make, these can be dedicated mono or stereo, down to 12, and these ones can pair up and become stereo. So you've got up to 9 stereo mixers,
Right.
or 12 mono. And the great thing about that is if you've got 9 pairs of ears, lots of people using ears nowadays. You're a guitarist.
Yeah.
Played with a few people. Yeah. Back in the day.
It's always back in the day, though, isn't it? You know, you don't appreciate it back in the day, but you kind of do when you look back in the day.
Back in the day. Now, not everyone wants to hear your 4x12.
Or 2 lots of 4x12 and a 2x12 as well as
cranked up at the back of the stage. So a lot of people are using ears these days, from venues to touring bands to churches. They're really, really popular because you can have a quiet stage. So having the ability to have 9 stereo mixers on an affordable console like this is brilliant. And then also, you know, if you did use wedges, there is feedback assist as well.
Yeah. So one of the really cool things about this, as well as having the gain assist, and this is something that I've used really to convert a lot of people out of analog mixers if they're looking to upgrade. So they might have a 12-channel analog mixer, and I say to them, well, what would be your ideal channel count that would be future-proof for you? Oh, 16 would be more than enough. So rather than just kind of upgrading them to an analog version, but a little bit bigger, I've been showing them the likes of the CQ, because there's one particular feature I really, really love in it, which is the feedback assistant. And when you show people when that's operated and then it kills all the feedback in the room, you have a light bulb moment from them, and the technophobe goes out of them. They realise that this is a real help, and it is just as easy as hitting a couple of buttons, having a mic gain set on the stage, and it solves all of their feedback issues. Do you want to show us kind of how you actually get to it on the mixer and how that works?
Sure. Okay, so we've got the setup button here.
Yep.
We go into config, and as you can see, we've got this GEQ FBA button here.
Yep.
That allows you to turn mixers either into a graphic equalizer or a feedback assist.
Cool.
Okay, so that means that you're not kind of restricting it kind of replaces the graphic EQ because it's doing that job for you. So if I was to go into mix 1, I'd turn that to a feedback assist. And go into the processing, you'll see in the channel processing here, we've got a feedback assist. You can see the RTA, so it's giving us our frequencies. And then it's just a case of turning it on. So we're going to have a mic and we're going to wave it in front of a monitor.
Yep.
And it's going to start whistling away. Now, in Guitar World, we love a bit of feedback.
Yeah.
On your monitors, we hate a bit of feedback. Yeah, so this will then start pulling down the frequencies, the problem frequencies. And it also gives you some filters, so you can actually change the filter settings. So we haven't got a mic and a howling feedback in here. The good thing about this feedback assist is lots and lots of effort have been put into it to actually make it sound like a proper speaker. Where afterwards, it doesn't just hack away and destroy your mix.
No.
So it's a really, really useful tool for getting usable monitors, but without the feedback on stage. So really, really cool piece of kit, and you get 16 channels of feedback detection on there. So if it's a really problematic live room, you know, you're going to have plenty of scope to work with there.
And the other thing that obviously I've noticed on this, and again, it's the same technology coming from CQ. It's really kind of weird that the technology comes from a lower price model and then gets introduced into mid-price models that possibly maybe more pro users using it. But listen, I'm there for an easy life. So once you've obviously set the feedback elimination in process on whichever mix, you've then obviously got live filters as well, so you can actually set it into a live mode. So as you move around from monitor to monitor, move in front of the speaker, it will automatically detect it. And I've heard this in real life, and it is so momentary that it doesn't cause a problem, and it immediately nips it out. But with it being a live filter, once the problem's gone, it then obviously takes that filter back to where it was, So again, it's not kind of destroying your mix.
Yeah.
The other thing I've really noticed as well, which I wasn't aware of before, is obviously there is feedback elimination, which is your auto thing, and there's obviously graphic equalizer, which is applicable to each individual mix. So you can have one mix as having that, one mix as having a graphic. Which is really cool. So it kind of does lend the engineers to feel like they're actually needed again. You know, you can EQ things if there's not a problem, just to EQ the room or just to EQ, the speaker that you've got there, and then put the auto feedback function on the stuff that's really problematic, that is kind of giving you jip sometimes and then not others.
Yeah, I mean, quite often we see musicians that will have ears and there'll still be wedges on stage doing other stuff. So having the ability to so as you can see, if we go into mix 2, we've got a graphic equalizer there. So they're having the ability to chop and change between whether you're using a mix with a feedback assist or a GEQ is really, really handy. Gives you ultimate flexibility. And also it's great if you're doing monitors from front of house. And, it's obviously a lot more difficult to kind of gauge what's going out on stage when you're halfway down a room. So having a tool like this is really handy.
I think it's really good also as well, having the ability of both. So if, say for example, for the auto feedback buster, if there's like instrument changes are quite frequent on stage, and the guitarist is switching from an acoustic guitar to a mandolin back to an electric guitar, then as soon as you pick up the acoustic, the first thing you're going to hear in front of your monitor after you plug in, having that as a bit of in your toolkit, then it means the engineer's not just kind of going, oh my God, where's it coming from? What frequency is that? And then trying to find it. Just put it in the live mode, let it do it. It's done it. And then it's kind of almost just sitting there waiting to jump in and take out those filters that are problematic.
Yeah. And there's always a debate about, how much kind of this stuff people want to see on their mixing consoles, and like you say, especially for an engineer that is paid to be there to actually do the job. But these are tools, they can be turned off, but quite honestly, these have been developed by some of the biggest sound engineers in the industry. So they've had a lot of input from people doing stadium gigs to people doing the dog and duck down the road, So there's a lot of input that's gone into how that should sound and how it should operate and how it should feel. They're not a kind of a tool that's like just people want a feedback assist. It's like years have gone into designing this.
So what about the effects? Have the effects changed at all on this model?
Yeah, we've got now we've got 6 effects engines instead of 4. We've still got 4 dedicated effects buses, which is really cool because I can go into the bus, into the mix, and I can see that we've got our vocal from this multitrack going into the effect. And then at the bottom here, we should have an effects return. So that's sending the effects back into the mix. On the library button here, we can see that we've got some reverbs, delays, we've got some modulation, so we've got some choral delays. So we've got a lot of effects that are great for thickening up vocals.
I love a doubler on a vocal. It just sounds absolutely awesome. It's something I kind of experimented with when I got my first digital desk, which was an Qu-5, which was great to go into. As I mentioned before, there was a few reasons why I went and spent the extra money on the SQ, and the main thing being the scribble strip down here. But when you kind of own a desk and then you kind of get a bit more familiar with what's inside it, especially the effects. And I was engineering at the time. I was engineering, strangely enough, at where they shot Phoenix Nights. So I was engineering at the Phoenix Club.
That's local, isn't it?
It is. It's in Farnworth.
Yeah,
so I was engineering at the Phoenix Club, and it was for a Green Day tribute band.
Okay.
And I'm messing around with the effects and everything, and obviously you can't put whole reverb on a Green Day banner. And if you're going to kind of get a little bit more creative and figure out how can you make the lead vocalist stand out and just get a bit more guts to his vocals. So I started pigging about with the doubling effect on it. And then there's a little button on that desk, and there is on this one I've seen it says double track or quad track. And I was just messing about with the mix and everything like that. And I was pigging about and changing it from doubling effect to quad track. On stage, you haven't got a clue.
Yeah.
But out front, you're getting this fat vocal. So to have something like that as an available on an effect, rather than just ambience, you've got some other textures that you can use is really, really cool.
Yeah, well, one of the great things about Allen Heath is that they try and put as much stuff in the box as possible, so that you can, everyone's familiar. Well, not everyone's familiar with Waves, but there's Waves, there's other plugins that you can use live these days. But Allen Heath, from the very top, the D Live down to the CQ, they want usable effects that people can get a really great sound of. Yeah, and one of the other benefits of the Q as well is, like the SQ, you can buy plugin add-ons.
Yes.
So there will be, for example, we will have some compressors that you'll be able to buy as single compressors or packs, and that will open up a whole new world for a lot of people for a console this kind of size.
Obviously it comes with compressors, gates and everything like that preloaded into it, but this is just an expandable thing that you can get without having to go to the expense of
because if you want a flavor of like a kind of a bespoke compressor that that is going to give you a lot more, it reacts differently, it gives you a different kind of sound and a different that's this compressor is great, but just to have the ability to sort of like do something different with your mix, then that's what's going to be fantastic about that.
Cool. So what else have we got? So obviously we've got 4 racks filled with stuff right now. 2 that you can fill later on, and you buy those as extras off the site.
No, so you can fill those 2 extra effects with effects here.
Okay, so that's cool.
If you did want to do a send and return, a kind of in a traditional way for an auction and return, so you can do something like that, or you can insert stuff into a channel as well.
Cool. I was going to muck around on the encoder wheel there just to have a quick nose. Let's go back to library again and just see what we've got. So all the usual stuff. You've got some modulation stuff there as well.
Yeah.
Flangers.
You put your flange over your left.
That's it. You get some Lenny Kravitz drums going on or whatever. Somebody will probably say it's a phaser, not a flanger. I don't know. It's a
we've got a phaser.
We've got a phaser as well. That's great. I bet it's going to be, we ran out on phaser. Okay, that's cool. Excellent. So let's have a look. So if we go back to library again, and then we can see what's set up. That's really kind of cool that it's not immediately like the same effect on the next processor. So somebody just diving into this desk straight away that's just looking through to see if they want just like a reverb and a delay, they can just toggle through the different effects engines, and they've automatically got something. They don't have to kind of preset through the library. It's set up from you get go. So you've got some kind of a really nice vocal filter type effects. Then you've got some ambient stuff, and then you can select whatever you want as well. That's really cool. There's another phaser.
Yeah,
love how it looks on the screen as well.
Well, yeah, I mean it's obviously inspired by vintage phasers and vintage equipment that studios especially will know and love.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
You can assign obviously the soft keys to certain parameters on effects as well, can't you? So you can
well, the soft keys, I mean, as you can see here, we've got
flashing away. I imagine that's like a tap delay possibly.
It's a tap delay.
Yeah.
So but that's fully assignable, so it doesn't have to be a tap delay.
Of course.
But what we have here is on the surface, we've got this soft keys tab here, which allows us to choose what we want that soft key to be.
Yeah.
So at the minute, this is a DCA mute. So if I press that, we can see that any channels that are inside a DCA will mute like this. But if we pull down the menu, we've got these kind of options here. So we've got automatic mic control and automatic mic mixer control. That's a mouthful. Channel mutes, pathwell control, door control. So this will have the ability to talk to a door on a computer. So there'll be a driver that will have Mackie and Huey control on it. So I'm running a Reaper session here, but these two could talk to each other quite happily then. We have MIDI control. So if we were using this with something like QLab, where we needed to trigger scenes, we can do that. Mute groups, recall scene, Q drive multi-track commands. So it might be that you want to do a automatic record.
I think if you can think it, they've designed it to do it, which is kind of really, really cool. There's the tap tempo talkback as well. It appears there's a talk thing on there, so I'm guessing that's for talkback on a soft key.
Yep.
That's fantastic. One thing actually, and now this is not soft key related, but this is just kind of like a controller related, and I've seen it just come up on the screen here. So I was looking through some of the specs on this, and I noticed that, and I can't remember if this was on the previous model or not, but for a lot of people, a very, very important thing, when they're moving from an analog desk to a digital desk, their familiarity with the effects and how they actually operate it, and want to turn the effects on and off is quite important. Now, digital consoles, for the most part, because an engineer's probably going to be running it, they will know when the effect needs to go on and off on a vocal. And so they'll be controlling the whole mix of things going on. But somebody who is an entertainer, who's doing talky bits between singing, you can foot switch the effects on and off on this one.
Yeah.
I can't remember if that was on the previous one. And if it was, I've missed it. But I clocked it and I thought, about time, because being able to do such a simple function from a console that clearly has absolutely everything is quite refreshing. So is there a particular foot switch that you use for this? Is this just a regular latching or latching switch from any manufacturer?
It's just a regular latching switch. So here...
In fact, you can actually do much more than that. You can even assign...
So you can tell the console what
it is you're plugging into it.
Yeah. So it'll say on, off. And as you can see, once you go into the foot switch, you can see what you are turning on and off.
Wow.
So there's quite a bit of stuff there. So you can recall scenes, for example.
Wow, so it is much more than just effects. I was thinking from the simple usage of an entertainer being on stage, finish the song, and they don't want to have to go over to the console to turn the effects down or readjust the settings. They want it at the bottom of the mic stand and the foot switch to turn on off the reverb. So it could be something as simple as that, or it could be much more involved, that it is a controller command that's been sent through a standard foot switch, which is great.
Yeah, because a lot of these do end up being used by bands and by solo performers especially, because they've only got one set of hands, so doing everything. Although I do know a drummer that does the sound, the lights.
That's dangerous, right?
Backing singing. It's impressive.
Drummers now, I mean, this is we're going back to the old thing where how do you know when a drummer's sat correctly on his stool? He dribbles out of both sides of his mouth. There, that's all. All these things are kind of gone. There's so much technology now that's applied to drummers, and not just drummers, but other members of the band. But drummers particularly are really adopting the sort of like the digital change. Digital drum pads, MIDI controllers, triggering tons of other stuff. And you will see them with consoles with umpteen devices being plugged into them. So again, this could potentially be somebody's own personal mixer for all of their outboard kit coming in, and then they're manipulating it however they want to do it because of all the different kind of commands that you can set it to do.
Yeah. I mean, changes. Drummer will generally, they'll be doing playback. They might be in charge of click. They might,
the click, obviously, of course.
And they'll be doing the mutes and stuff in between, you know. So there's a lot that drummer does, and unfortunately, I suppose for them is because they're a static person,
and they're sat down.
Whereas you, the guitarist, is obviously flouncing around on stage and
obviously, in my fluency days,
and on your knees doing all that stuff,
foot on the monitor, all the rest of it.
Get your feet off the monitor,
absolutely, which is definitely where I need the auto feedback function. In fact, no, I don't, because I want it to feedback because I'm a guitarist at the end of the day. So it's all part of the drama.
The functionalities on scenes has been updated massively. It's grown over the last few years, where it kind of finding the feet as to what scenes were good for and what they could do. So musical theatre generally has always used it. They use hundreds of scenes in a show because it's all automated, and they just want to be able to, as soon as a musician comes on, next scene, and they're ready to go.
And we just take this for granted now. We really do. And all it is as simple as whatever good work that you've got is you can save it into the memory.
Yes.
A scene is literally that. We're not really talking about anything any more complex than that. Is what you've got set up, where your faders lie, how your EQ settings and your effects are. That sounds great. I want to use that next time as a starting point. And you can store it. You can give it a name. You can write many of them in there, so you can have your whole gig roster for however long. And when you run out of them, you can store them to a pen.
Yeah, well, on the Qu, we've got this scenes functionality here. We've got 300 scenes in a show file. So the difference between a show file and a scene is that a scene's like a snapshot of what's going on at this very moment. So we've got a bit of playback here, but for the next song, we don't want the horns, or maybe we're going to take them out. Maybe we'll mute them as well. Okay, so I can go to scene 6 here. I can say horns. That's not rude, is it?
Depends what mood I'm in.
I can't even spell it. Okay,
Hens.
Hens. Okay, so we've made this new scene. Okay, and if I press go, well, we've already done it. We've made this scene, but I want to go back to the original. I want the horns
Son
back.
of a preacher man. Yeah.
And so that's what I've saved originally as a scene. So when I do that, that brings the horns back in. So as you can see, that if you had 20, 30 songs in a set list, for example, but you've got a lot of musicians changing, or you're muting mics because you're changing position on stage, you can then create lots of scenes that will follow what's going on stage.
Yeah.
If it's a venue, for example, you might want a scene which is the starting point for any bands that comes in. So you know what the patch roughly is on stage and where your inputs are. So you might just put something together. You've got the same kind of cover bands coming in week after week. Really
helpful for guest engineers as well.
Yeah. And so you can put a starting point in, which is really great. We also then have the ability to store a show file, which is like the complete status of the console.
Yes.
So that would include all your scenes.
Yeah.
So then you can save that to a USB key.
Marvelous.
And the great thing about that is you can then take it to another console.
Yeah.
And you can download your show file there with all the scenes that you've saved. So where this is very, very useful is that if you're not familiar with digital consoles, and you spent a while setting this up and you're kind of really happy with how that is, and you don't want someone else to come in and mess it up, but what you can do is you can save some scenes that how they operate, because this is new, layers are new, you can put anything anywhere. So you want to save your hard work. This allows you to save it to a USB key, and so it means that every time you come up to the console, you can start from where you've left off. So yeah, scenes, shows,
all storable in the memory.
The other thing that is useful to know is that this isn't the only size or the only type of Q.
Yeah, I figured that. So we can go bigger.
We can go bigger. So the difference between the old Q and the new Q is all of the Qs are now 32 white line inputs.
Yes.
Yeah. And they follow the SQ5 kind of numbering sequence. So and the Q16, 24, 32. In the Q5 is 16 and a master fader with 16 inputs. The Q6.
There you go. Is a 24.
is the old 24.
Yep.
There's 24 faders and a master with 24 inputs, and you never guess what the Q7 is.
Yeah, 32.
32 with 32 and a master.
Marvellous. And obviously this still currently uses, obviously, if you notice on the back of this, like Nick was saying, there is obviously a limited number of inputs. 16 might be enough for most people, for mic inputs. But you can obviously link up the digital snakes, and that's kind of where everything starts to really, really expand.
Yeah.
You've got a good offering of digital snakes at the moment. There's probably about 4 or 5 different versions that you can actually use with this, I think. They are still compatible with this desk, or is the new versions coming out that are compatible?
So one of the wonderful things about this new Q, much like the SQ, is we've got an S-Link port.
Yes.
So the S-Link port is a clever port, and it can detect what's on the end of it.
Right.
So it can talk to the old boxes, which are on a different protocol, to the new boxes. So you can use, if you've got an old AB2412.
Yes.
Yeah. Or a AB16.8. You can use those on this console, so you don't have to upgrade your whole infrastructure if budget doesn't allow.
Yeah.
But it will also work with the new 96K DX168 boxes.
Right. Okay.
And the GX4816 box. So it's a really clever port that just enables you to use pretty much everything from the kind of I/O in world of Allen Heath.
Yeah.
We've got DX88s, which are great for installs. which is an 8-in, 8-out box that you can put in an amp room for a fixed install. We've got a DxO12, which is 12 outputs, but you can have up to 8 of them as AES outputs. So if you wanted to keep all your digital signal digital to an amp, the digital amp, or to IEM systems, you can do that without converting to analog and then back to digital again. So that DX port is really super handy. Sorry, the S-Link port is really, really cool. If you go onto the Allen Heath website, there is an IO everything page, and if you were to put this console into that, it would tell you what boxes would work with this.
That's cool. Now, the other thing I thought, obviously, when you're upgrading, you're going through the ranges, obviously it gives you different elements, different essentially tricks to your tool bag, if you like. Is this Dante, or can it be Dante?
Well, we have 3 Dante versions.
Right.
So for each size, we've got a Dante version. So there's a Q5D, Q6D, Q7D. So the wonderful thing about Dante is that it can talk to multiple different devices from different manufacturers. So it doesn't have to be an Allen Heath device. We do have Dante IO boxes. You might want to split Dante between, say, this console and a broadcast console. So the Dante has 16 by 16 channels of audio, and it works like any other Dante device on virtual sound card.
Right. So, and that is a physical, so there's going to be a Q5, Q5D.
And it's just a socket on the Cat5 socket on the back.
Excellent. So, okay, that's really, really cool. So, I mean, for the people that are probably never, ever going to use Dante, because as soon as you mention Dante, number one, the cost goes up. Because anything that is Dante and is configurable by Dante is expensive. Well, I mean,
it's not a massive upgrade in price, but yeah, I mean, if you don't need it, you just buy the standard. We've got multi-track on USB-C, for example, and we've got the SD card, so and even stereo playback and record on a USB-A. So there's plenty of options. But certainly if you're putting it into, I don't know, you might have Dante-enabled amps in your install.
Or it's a broadcast thing, and you need to be able to configure and plug it into the system. It's got to work through that.
Dante microphones, for example. So
marvelous. You've taken in an awful lot of information regarding this product. It is absolutely fantastic, but we are going to have these in stock. We'll be on the site. They'll be available to demo from the Scan store and demo room. Nick, thanks very much for your time.
No, that's been a pleasure.
Excellent, and thanks for watching.